So what is this purpose of innovation? I may actually say this is not a great question. This is a very basic question. This is a very fundamental question, and this is not a very novel answer that I have. What is it? Let's go back to one of our first inventors, our first innovators. I sometimes use interchangeably these two words because the inventor is slightly different from the innovator, but I'll just slightly, I'll not hesitate to use them interchangeably for a reason, and I'll explain it later. Now, if you look at this person who invented the wheel, he just looked at the way people were doing in his immediate, context, how they were doing things, and then he said, "Oh, goodness me, look at that! These people struggling. Look at my own struggle with things, with trying to lift all these things up. So how do I do? Well, let me craft something up." And he came up with a wheel. So when we look at what the wheel did, it did something remarkable for several thousands of years to come on this planet. For the life of human beings on this planet, for several thousands of years, that invention made a difference. Let's look at, this is Thomas Alva Edison, but he's just representative of that innovation, which is called electric bulb. But there were around 22 people who tried to produce an electric bulb, and Thomas Alva Edison, gets a lot of credit for doing it because he found the right filament. But the fact remains that when he thought about producing an electric bulb, when he did that, it lit up the night. So there was something that was remarkable that happened in the process. And then I take you to a third candidate of my story, and I would say the third hero of my story, and this is none other than our own Mahatma Gandhi. I consider him a great innovator. What did he innovate? He just looked at the world around him and he said, well, what can I do to improve? Just like the one who invented the wheel, like the one who went and created the bulb, this person too thought about how he can get us freedom using a completely different set of means of non-violence and truth. Now, what is common between these three very different kind of entities? They all challenged and changed the paradigm. The paradigm that was existing at their time, they looked at it, they questioned it, and they made an effort to change it. And innovations that alter the paradigm have far-reaching consequences, sometimes spread over multiple generations, as we see in the case of the three that we have just discussed. They're not uncommon. They're not at all uncommon. We see them all over the place. We see them, in fact, if you go and see how, you get into, you take a bike and you go on a bike, with two wheels, it's a great innovation. They're very commonly there. They're all around us. But some of them have altered the paradigm. And they're not uncommon, but the current economic models do not actually necessarily incentivize that. They incentivize and promote those that give the greatest profit. So which is where we lead up with now. So if you see pharmaceutical industry around the world, the drugs that are manufactured are mostly for the rich diseases. The people who can afford to go and buy those drugs, whatever diseases they have, pharmaceutical industry tends to go and innovate drugs for those diseases. And it's this is very currently happening on the planet. If you look at how car manufacturers act, they probably had a lot of scope for innovating and then coming up with vehicles that use much lower amounts of fossil fuels, more dependent on renewables, but they never did it for a long time until one startup entrepreneur came and said, suddenly that he's going to produce a car that will purely run on electricity for, say, thousands of miles, whatever. But this is where the whole problem is. When we see the Volkswagen scandal, if you think about how innovation was happening there, the focus was on getting more and more products off the shelf than their concern for environment.